From this point on, my brother and his wife have decided that they'll run the household by themselves, asking me to find a different place to live. My mother, siding with them, treated my presence as a nuisance. Do they even realize who's been paying for most of our home expenses? Such disregard was something I never saw coming. My name is Melissa, and I'm a 31-year-old woman who has lived at my parents' place since returning from college. Initially, I dove into the corporate world, aiming to carve out my career path. However, the hurdles proved too daunting, and I returned home facing a period of joblessness. During this time, I explored remote work opportunities, leveraging my background in science. I started a freelance engineering career, taking on small projects. At first, the pay was modest, but the freedom to work independently held profound significance for me, offering a dark contrast to the structured environment of traditional jobs. This setup allowed me to earn a substantial income with minimal social interaction. As my confidence and client base grew, so did my income, eventually matching what I would make in a typical corporate job. Nevertheless, the main challenge was my parents' understanding of my work setup, particularly my mother's hesitance. My father seemed to get it after I explained, but my mother, who clings to traditional views, couldn't grasp the concept of working from home. Despite my efforts to clarify, showing her client emails, and pay statements as proof of my legitimate work, she remained dubious. She would often question the sustainability of my career and hint at its possible illegitimacy, suspecting it might be some underhanded business or even connected to some questionable group. Despite my detailed explanations, my mother's doubts persisted. She frequently voiced concerns over my dependency on what she saw as unstable unemployment benefits. While I had thought about moving out and living independently, my savings weren't quite ready to handle such a transition. During this period, my father's health began to decline, with worsening conditions in his legs and back requiring nursing care and leading to his early retirement. He assured me his pension would be enough, but knowing my mother's spending habits, I knew challenges lay ahead. As I watched my father's face, the lines of worry and fatigue were evident, mirroring his anxiety about our uncertain future. Throughout my college years and my subsequent return home due to mental health challenges, he had been my unwavering support. The thought of leaving him to fend for himself while I pursued an independent life weighed heavily on my heart. My mother, too, was visibly shaken by the abrupt decline in his health, struggling to grasp the sudden change. In light of these circumstances, I felt a profound sense of duty to give back to the family that had supported me through thick and thin. I reassured my father of my commitment to support the family financially. From then on, he was initially surprised, questioning the sufficiency of my income. However, I confidently demonstrated the stability of my financial situation, which seemed to alleviate his concerns. Encouraged by his acceptance, I took on the responsibility of contributing to household expenses, medical bills, and other financial obligations each month. I began transferring a significant portion of my income into my father's bank account. Aware of my mother's frequent use of my father's credit card, I took proactive steps by creating a new main card for myself and providing her with a supplementary card to help manage spending more efficiently. My father, always cautious about finances, urged my mother to adopt a more frugal approach. Despite my contributions, my mother remained skeptical and even questioned whether it was still appropriate for me to live at home. I defended my position by highlighting the financial support I was providing, arguing that my absence would make things more challenging for everyone. Although she was initially unconvinced and suspicious of my motives, my father's steady persuasion eventually swayed her to allow me to stay. As I continued balancing my work and household responsibilities, I noticed my mother increasingly taking my efforts for granted. Her expectations for household chores grew stricter, often chiding me to complete tasks faster. "Can't you finish your chores quicker?" she would complain. I tried to explain the challenges of multitasking while maintaining a full workload, but she dismissed my concerns. The strain in our relationship grew, becoming seemingly irreparable. In stark contrast to my father's understanding and appreciation of my efforts, despite this strained dynamic, we persevered in this manner for a year. However, after that year, my father's health deteriorated further, necessitating his hospitalization. I visited him daily, maintaining our bond and support through this tough time. In those moments of shared concern and reassurance, my father expressed his gratitude, fully recognizing the tension between my mother and me as he faced his health challenges. Despite the emotional toll it sometimes took on me, I stayed committed to supporting my family, drawing strength from memories of my mother's dedication during my student years. However, the dynamic within our household took a sharp turn with the unexpected arrival of my brother, Matthew, and his wife, Catherine. They announced they would be living with us to supposedly lighten my load. This news caught me off guard, and I noticed my mother avoiding my gaze during the discussion. Although Matthew and Catherine claimed they were here to help, their words seemed to carry an unspoken implication that I wasn't doing enough. My mother subtly hinted at my need to contribute more, thanking them. Despite my surprise, I learned that Matthew, a graduate of a prestigious college, had secured a position at a well-respected company. This revelation made me question the real reasons behind their sudden move into our home. Surely, with Matthew's substantial salary, they could manage without relying on my financial support, especially since I was already fully engaged in my career pursuits. Adapting to life with Matthew and Catherine at home proved more challenging than expected. One morning, as I was deep in my work, Catherine's voice pierced through. "Wake up, Melissa. Make breakfast." She banged on my door, demanding attention. As a morning person already up and focused on my tasks, I explained that I was already working. Despite this, they insisted I prepare breakfast, pressing me to hurry along with it. The added demands of accommodating my brother and his wife added another layer of complexity to our already tense household dynamics. Catherine demanded I get breakfast ready, her tone leaving little room for protest. Reluctantly, I dragged myself to the kitchen. Our family usually enjoyed a leisurely pace in the morning, savoring meals when everyone, including my mother and Catherine, was around. I had always thought it was common for a wife to prepare breakfast for her husband, but Catherine insisted on a collaborative effort, and so I joined them. Despite my best efforts, their dissatisfaction was immediately apparent. "Is this what you prepared for breakfast?" "This isn't enough," they critiqued. I had meticulously arranged a breakfast plate with soft scrambled eggs, a crisp lettuce salad, freshly buttered toast, and a succulent sausage. Thinking it would be appreciated, yet it seemed I had somehow missed the mark. "You don't have to eat it," I retorted, surprised by their blunt criticism. Their shock was palpable, and quickly their surprise turned to confrontation. They questioned my attitude and demanded to know who I thought I was. My brother, often condescending and perhaps influenced by our mother, mocked me despite my attempts to explain my work commitments. They dismissed them outright. "What kind of work is that?" "Are you crazy?" they exclaimed. Frustrated by their lack of understanding and the disruption to my work, I grabbed my laptop, ignored their further protests, and left the house. As I walked away, my brother's voice followed me, demanding to know where I was going. I ignored his question and made my way to the hospital where my father was staying. Rushing into my father's hospital room, I found him looking up with a surprised expression. "Melissa, what's wrong?" "You seem flustered," he observed. I recounted the morning's events, and my father, wearing a look of concern, responded, "I didn't know they were acting like that." "I'm sorry, Melissa. Don't worry about it. You can choose your way of life." Feeling somewhat lost and worried about my mother's comfort with Matthew at home, I shared my concerns. The conversation with my father provided a much-needed perspective, reminding me of the importance of standing up for my own choices in life. My father offered me comforting reassurance, saying, "You don't need to be in a place where you don't feel comfortable. All I want is for you to live happily in the way you choose." Bolstered by his supportive words, I decided to leave home that evening. As I returned, I walked into a scene that felt straight out of a tense movie. The serious expressions on the faces of my mother, brother, and sister-in-law were unmistakable. My brother immediately accused me of shirking work responsibilities, claiming he had to take the day off because of my absence, a decision I internally questioned for its ease. Their voices grew louder, culminating in my brother's stern command, "Get out of here. From now on, the three of us will live together. If you don't want to stay, please leave. We don't need an overbearing presence like you." His words were a blow, and to my surprise, I could only muster a confused why. Ignoring my protest, my brother and his wife were adamant about my departure, declaring that I was no longer needed. With our father absent, my mother aligned with their sentiments and saw me as an obstruction. My frustration mounted as they downplayed my role in managing the family's finances, focusing solely on their concerns. Enraged by their insensitivity and unwillingness to let the situation deteriorate further under their control, I devised a plan. I secretly transferred the funds from the credit card my mother used daily to another account I managed. This move was designed to catch her off guard. When she found she could no longer use her card, I also initiated a transfer of money from my father's account, a critical support for the family's financial stability. To reinforce my position and ensure they understood the impact of my contributions, I made sure that only my father's medical expenses could be withdrawn from the separate account I had set up, a detail my mother was not aware of. This meant a significant financial burden would now shift to my brother and his wife. While I wasn't fully aware of the specifics of my brother's income, I was confident that he would now truly feel the financial strain. After completing all the necessary arrangements, I packed my belongings and announced my intention to leave, saying, "I'm leaving this place." To my surprise, my mother, brother, and sister-in-law, who had previously been relentless in their harassment, were visibly shocked by my decision. Their expressions of astonishment showed they hadn't anticipated such a decisive move from me. Yet despite their shock, there was a subtle hint of enjoyment in their reactions. As I declared my departure, they made belittling remarks and expressed their relief with biting comments like, "You're finally leaving. We've never dealt with such a troublesome person. You're not coming back, are you?" In response, I firmly stated, "Of course not. Don't contact me." They smiled as I walked out, but I couldn't help wondering how they would cope once the reality of my absence and the financial implications settled in. Embarking on a new life in a tranquil environment, I found solace in the freedom to enjoy my own space. Refreshed and focused, I immersed myself in my work. However, as I had anticipated, the peace was soon disrupted by an unexpected call from my brother. "I told you not to contact me. What's wrong?" I asked, my tone reflecting my annoyance. His voice carried a mix of surprise and urgency as he inquired about my involvement in the family's financial transactions. Confirming my role, I reminded him that I had explained my work responsibilities multiple times, but neither he nor our mother had taken them seriously. Expressing his confusion, he admitted, "Well, Mom said a lot of things, and I was a little confused." It was an acknowledgement that perhaps they had misjudged the situation and the fault wasn't mine after all. He explained that they were in a financial bind. With my absence, they found it challenging to manage expenses, and my mother's unchecked spending had only made things worse. Although I felt a twinge of sympathy, I firmly stated, I was able to support you in many ways because I was living there. Now that I'm not, you'll have to manage on your own. The situation took an unexpected turn when my brother urgently contacted me, asking for help to transfer money into his bank account. Baffled, I half-jokingly asked if he was serious, especially since he had been working at a sizable company. To my surprise, he admitted he had been fired due to a significant error at work. This revelation left me momentarily speechless. It seemed he might have moved back to our parents' home under the assumption that there was plenty of money to go around, possibly relying on the idea of a stable pension after our father's retirement. Wanting to clarify the extent of my financial contributions to the household, I found a certain irony in imagining his shock upon discovering the reality. His wife and my mother also joined in pleading for financial help, claiming they were nearly out of savings. My mother even disclosed that my father had decided to stop contributing to the household finances. In response, I declared that I had supported them sufficiently and urged them to work hard and support themselves. I chose to cut off communication, emphasizing my decision to distance myself from their financial difficulties. Meanwhile, my father, aware of the tension in his relationship with my mother, consulted a lawyer and decided to pursue a quieter life elsewhere. I continued to visit my father daily, maintaining our close relationship. During one of these visits, a friend informed me about my brother's ongoing struggles, further highlighting the consequences of their lack of financial prudence. He had settled into a modest apartment, adopting a frugal lifestyle. Meanwhile, my mother, who had always been a homemaker, struggled to adapt to her new job, and my brother found it challenging to mesh with the opinions of his younger colleagues. Despite his wife's efforts to support him, she eventually found the pressure overwhelming and chose to leave, forcing my brother and mother to face their challenges on their own. Concerns lingered about my mother, who continued her old habits of overspending, leading to mounting debts. However, I recognized that there were limits to the assistance I could provide without compromising my stability. Focused on my endeavors, I worked diligently from my comfortable living space, gradually accumulating more resources and contemplating new ventures. I aimed to spend quality time with my father, who remained a source of cheer in my life. Each moment spent with him was cherished, appreciating the peace and happiness he now found away from the familial tensions.